It's time now to take a look at the stories making headlines on Nigerian newspapers. I have with me in the studio Public Affairs Analyst Oladeinde Ariyo. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Good morning. How are you?
Good to see you. I can see you decide to
Yes, I'm launching my presidential ambition today.
Oh, really? You're going to have to pay for that. All right, via Zoom from Enugu also is a Public Affairs Analyst, Ambrose Igboke. Good morning.
Good morning, my people.
All right, let me quickly take a dash into what the papers are saying this morning. This Nigeria is first. Amid Ukraine peace talks in Belarus, Russian deadly attack kills 11. The writer reads, Nigeria kicks against Poland's blocking of citizens fleeing to their country. The Punch newspaper is next. Ukraine-Russia war. Federal government to airlift 2,000 Nigerians. Evacuation begins Wednesday. Buhari approves funding as federal government tips Air Peace, Max Air. 4 or 5 aeroplanes to evacuate Nigerian refugees. That's according to the federal government. The Daily Sun is next. Russia-Ukraine war. Federal government begins evacuation of trapped Nigerians tomorrow. Receives 256 Nigerians in Romania, Hungary. Awaits arrival of 200 as 23 undergo documentation. And above the nameplate right on the air of the newspaper, NNPC gives IOC's conditions on divestment from Nigeria. That's on page 25 of the Daily Sun. Right, the next is Leadership newspaper. Students staged nationwide protest, seek end to federal government's ASUU dispute. Barricade entrance to federal secretariat. Federal government ASUU resume talks today. Nigeria Tribune is next. ASUU strike. Education minister walks out on students. And the writer reads, NAN's protest nationwide locks down federal secretariat, gives federal government 24 hours to end strike. That's from the Nigerian Tribune. Blueprint. Assent to electoral amendment bill. How Jonathan's government tried to scuttle Buhari's 2015 victory. That's the presidency talking there. First news, battle for Aso Rock. That's the kicker, and the headline reads, how PDP can regain power in 2023. That's Governor Doye Diri giving an expose there. It's giving a clue some way, so you got to read that out. Now, 40% of Nigerian youths jobless. Additional, that's on the Vanguard newspaper. Says restructuring should be economic, financial viability driven, as group asks him to join 2023 presidential race. The Nation newspaper, worsening petrol scarcity cripples cities, businesses. Lagos, Abuja, Ibadan, Oshogbo, worst hit. TUC Malls industrial action. Daily Trust is next. 7 days to Buhari's ultimatum. Ministry yet to seal NPA's pilotage contract rather. Revenue loss hits 102. Then it said pre-qualified bidders right present seek conclusion of process. Well, business day. Governors resist Senate, federal government power grab of electricity sector. Nigerian News Direct, federal government targets $105 billion capital base for NNPC, vows to make corporation most capitalized company in Africa. And the penultimate news headline is coming from the national economy. E-commerce import killing Nigeria's manufacturing sector. That's according to the investigation carried out there. And the last but not the least is from Guardian newspaper. Hurdles as Nigerian companies take over IOC's onshore assets. Well, so let's look at what the papers are saying here by expatiating on some of the headlines that we take. We're so much concerned about what Nigerians are actually facing there. I would like to start with you from Enugu, Public Affairs Analyst Ambrose Igboke. So how have you been following the plight of Nigerians in the diaspora, Ukraine, who are caught up in the Ukraine-Russian war? At first, they were faced with racist, asking them not to get into the Polish country. But now we're getting stories from the federal government. We're hearing, getting information from the federal government that they are getting a safe landing. What do you think?
Well, first of all, in international diplomacy, if you don't take yourself seriously, no other country does. Nigeria has fallen to this low because of how we have played our international diplomacy. First of all, we have made a mincemeat of our reputation. We have, gone down below the ladder that even countries in West Africa disrespect us woefully. Gone are the days when Nigeria used to play the big brother role in the whole of Africa. In the 1970s, early the whole of the 70s, Nigeria was the big brother in the whole of Africa. Nigeria was in the forefront of fighting apartheid and apartheid regimes in South Africa, in where we call Zimbabwe today. Those days used to be Rhodesia. In all these Southern African countries, Nigeria was in the forefront. Nigeria had the audacity in the mid-70s during Murtala Mohammed Obasanjo regime to go East Bloc. That is, instead of, because of the role UK and America were playing in South Africa in terms of the supporting the apartheid regime, Nigeria went to the Soviet bloc, the USSR, and aligned with them. And that is where they formed an alliance. And Nigeria was even supplying arms to Zimbabwe to fight apartheid. That was the role. Nigeria was respected then. And then today we have dovetailed. Even in the early 90s, we saw the role Nigeria played as a big brother in the Western African region, where it mobilized force called the ECOMOG, led the force, and stopped the war in Liberia and in Sierra Leone. Nigeria was respected then. Right. All of a sudden, we lost it, and we cannot even own our own. So our citizens are mistreated wherever they find themselves because of we have not even respected ourselves. We don't even respect our own citizens. So other countries see the way we treat our own citizens, and that is why they extend those kind of dehumanizing treatment to our own citizens. The situation is still very bad because as of yesterday, it's only some few female Nigerians and other people of black color that were allowed to cross over.
Okay.
Most of the male citizens are still trapped in Poland. Meanwhile, you see people like the Arabs, like the Indians, and all those people are allowed to go through. Why? Because of the fear. In international diplomacy, it is about fear, mutually assured respect for each other.
Yeah.
But because we don't even respect ourselves, we don't have anything to brag about the international community apart from our people. Our government should do more to ensure that Nigerian citizens are not treated this shabbily anywhere in the world.
Right. So government doing more is one of the reasons why we have it from the Punch newspaper, where federal government is to airlift 2,000 Nigerians. Evacuation begins tomorrow. That's good news for you.
Well, for me, it's no big deal. Why? Because you want to ask yourself, why do we have so many Nigerian youths seeking education in Ukraine? If we are the so-called giants of Africa, it's annoying. It's a reflection of systemic and endemic bad governance that has bedeviled almost every phase of our life, and that is education gone down the drain. You find out that those people there, those children, most of them are there to study medicine, whereas we have enough universities in Nigeria offering medical sciences. But what happened? There's a choke, so they have to look elsewhere. That reflects a nation that failed to plan ahead. Because if we have been able to project our population, figures, we should know by this time there'll be increased demand for specific stuffs and make advanced provision available. Again, there's a lesson for me as a parent who also was in the through of sending my daughter abroad for education. They were too young to know what to do. Looking at their faces, they drew my tears. They were stranded and helpless. Unfortunately, the kind of maltreatment that is still a lot of Africans, anywhere we find ourselves among the whites, still came to the fore. I saw them pushing them out of the train and stopping them from even entering. There was a case where a Ghanaian student sat somewhere, and then the white guy insisted he must leave. We thought there was hope for them to easily cross into Poland or Belarus or other places. But it became a very big deal. We had to be dragging the government before they started talking. Initially, everything was like as if we didn't have anybody in Ukraine.
Well,
whereas we knew that a lot of Nigerian students are in Ukraine studying.
Do you not see this way that the reason why some Nigerians are being faced with racism is because of the skin color, not exactly Nigerians? For instance, the way we treat the white-skinned individuals in this country, we treat them like kings. But they're in their own country. Could this be a fallout of colonialism?
Well, colonialism, as was experienced then, they came forcefully and introduced trading in human beings, and our people then gullibly fell for it. That happened. But what do you have now? Because of gross mismanagement of resources here, people are now looking for greener pastures elsewhere. When a foreigner comes to Nigeria, even if it's a barber or a tailor, they call him expatriate. Okay? He not only gets to live in highbrow area like VI or Nikoyi, he has a car, driver, cooks, and other people attached to him. Yeah. I have been a victim before. I was working in the company as an accountant, and they brought one young man from Israel that knew next to nothing about what's on the ground. And they made him my boss. I was reporting to him. It wasn't nice, but I had no choice. I was living somewhere in Bagada. Yeah. The young man was living in VI, and with all the attached prerequisites. So that mentality is still there. Unfortunately now, as I was writing in a book, The Return of the Plantation Boy, now, if they should bring planes and say, if you want to go abroad, enter, right, you'll be surprised that people will rush in to leave. Why? Nigeria is not being made habitable. It's being made increasingly unsafe, economically unreliable, and making our future look despondent, as if there is none ahead of us.
Let me throw this on air to Igboke. What he's saying, virtually everyone often, we have that opinion that Nigeria is not habitable, just like in his own words, and it's not so friendly for us to live in. And that's the reason why we have a lot of quote-unquote japa, as the way they say it. But do you think this is exclusive prerogative of the government to do, or we as Nigerians, we as the individuals, we have a lot to do? Look at the landlord. The way he governs his own house is even worse than the way a government rules a country. So do you not see this as individual efforts in making a better nation for us to enjoy and live in?
No, that the government in any sphere, in any country, first of all, sets the pace. The government is the one that creates the laws. The government is the one that enforces the law. The government is the one that creates the policies. The government are the ones that implement the policies. The government are the ones that ensure that there is ethics, morality, and national ethos in the country. So if those who have elected to govern us are seen and seem to be seen to be doing the wrong things, are not keeping to giving us that moral compass to follow, the rest of the citizens, of course, will not do the right thing. So first of all, as Chinua Achebe said in his book, The Trouble with Nigeria, the problem of Nigeria is simply leadership. When you lack leadership, we, the citizens, will not do better. But if the leadership is right, the citizens can now toe a line and see examples to follow. Let's take example of the 70s, where Nigeria, let me take example of Delta State Company, Alaja in Warri, and Ajakuta State Company. As early as after the war, from 1973, between 73 to 75, Nigerians were being, young Nigerians were being sent abroad to study all sorts of engineering in preparation for the opening of a company that will start 7 years' time, which was started around 1980, 1981. That was planning. There was no issue of accommodation. Accommodation was everywhere. There was no issue of transportation. It was provided for people who had a conducive environment to work. So why would somebody steal to pay house rent? There was no need for stealing. You had your accommodation serviced by the state. You have your transportation taken care by the state. You have your water, your bills running, taken care by the state. You have the hospital, you have everything. Why will you steal? There was no need. And that is why people of that generation, some of them fell flat when the company just folded up abruptly. The same thing with the Nigerian Sugar Company, somewhere in Bachita in Kwara State.
Right.
Nigeria planned and had estates for people. Now we don't do any planning. Therefore, the Nigerian situation is such in a mess that you can't even have, students don't even have hostel to stay. Workers don't have anywhere to live. The police, the barracks is not even enough. They're not living amongst civilians. The military, the same thing. This is unheard of. So responsibility is on the leadership of the country. It cannot be passed. The buck of the failure cannot be passed to the citizen. It is when the leaders get it right that the citizens will now toe a line. And that is how a country is run.
Well, bearing in mind that those who are occupying powers are actually from among us. But then that's by the way. Let me bring it back to the studio. Today it's Ukraine. Tomorrow it can be Poland. Another day it can be Belarus. It can be any country. Yeah. So if you look at how would you describe the humanitarian response and hospitality provided for the refugees and their treatment by some of the countries? For instance, the UK actually dished out some materials for the refugees who are running to other countries. So what lessons, are there lessons learned by some of the leaders or some of us who are Nigerians and other part of the country?
A whole lot of lessons. And I'm looking forward to attending a seminar where we will dissect this crisis and be able to isolate the consequences and of course provide solutions whereby in future it will not happen. Now, if you are very conversant with the healthcare services, UK specifically has some almost visa-free programs to attract Nigerian nurses and doctors to UK to go and work there. Why? Because they know we have them here in abundance, but they do not have facilities to work with, and they will just take them away, pay them very well. I mean, make life better for them. So for me, we cannot be waiting for humanitarian crises like this or disasters before we will wake up. For instance, if this thing should persist, it will alter importation and exportation. And here is a country that survives on importation. Yesterday on another platform, and I said Nigeria is not a petroleum exporting country, we're a crude oil exporting country. No, because if we say petroleum, are we exporting kerosene? So much that we depend on foreign countries to get basic things as petrol, kerosene, and all of that. So imagine if there's a disruption that is global like that, we will be stranded and our economy will shut down. As we are heavily indebted. And some of us are concerned because we ask the question, how are we going to be paying back these loans? Because they are not expended or ended on revenue generation projects, but on social benefits and all of that.
All right.
So for me, it's important that the people that they get to blame, it's unfortunate. The people are impoverished, they are weakened, and poverty has been so weaponized against them. They've lost their voice. They cannot talk again. So government, leadership should begin to look inwards and know that they are not offering us quality leadership. All
right, there are so many things being reported in the newspaper this morning. Let's change tack a bit by looking at the ASUU strike, where the education minister purportedly walks out on the students. NANS protest nationwide, locks down federal secretariat, gives federal government 24 hours to end strike. How did you receive this news?
That the minister will walk out on students, again, shows you the mindset of some elements or characters that found themselves at the corridors of power. The students are the byproducts now, or let me tell you, they are the main products from education. They are not byproducts. How do you now treat them this way? So many people they got in for 4-year, 5-year courses. In the last 8 years, we've had strikes that went as far as 9 months, extending needlessly now. They are staying in the university system. Nobody likes that, because what that meant was that their future was being stunted. We all had our plans and programs. Oh, I'll be in for 4 years, I will be out, do my NYC and start my life. But what happened? Some people spent 2 extra years, not because they failed any exam anyway, but because ASUU went on strike. And why is ASUU going on strike? They are making genuine demands, whether we like it or not. When you compare their situation to political appointees or elected officials, you see the difference. And let me tell you, what it takes to be a professor is not a tea party compared to being a chairman of a council. And when you look at their lifestyles, their take-home pay, and attached benefits, you begin to wonder, we want to be a professor in future, and that is the big deal. They have to. These are people who enjoyed free education, who enjoyed better educational system, who had hostels, who were taking lunch for less than 1 naira way back.
Let me take it to Igboke, and that will be your final submission on the newspaper headlines this morning. Well, it has been said that to meet this segment of ASUU demand, the federal government must cough out 1 trillion naira. But the best it did recently was the release of 30 billion naira as a sign of commitment. How have you been reading the developments around the ASUU strike?
You know, in my earlier submission, I told you that it's about leadership. You can see where we are talking about. The issue of ASUU strike, is it a problem of the citizens? It is not. It is the problem of a leadership that does not recognize the fact that education is the bedrock of a national development. So they don't realize that. So they are busy pursuing shadows. For example, the money for taking care of these lecturers and their demand is something that, if it is political activity, it's something can be arranged quickly. But because it's education, they keep quiet. NNPC, for example, can provide that money. NNPC alone can provide that money. NPA can provide that money. Nigerian Customs can provide that money. So they should look inwards and see how to raise this fund. 30 billion in the face of 1 trillion is an insult. It goes to show that they are not even ready to address the situation. And then look at the Minister of Education. I mean, this Minister of Education, you worked out on students. That shows, first of all, to show the temperament of the man, whether the temperament has the capacity to run that office with his temperament. Secondly, to show that he's a big man and that cannot be talked to until he wants to be talked to the way he wants to be talked to. And that is the problem. I keep reiterating that the etymology of the word minister is a Latin word that means servant. So when you're a minister, you are a servant. But our minister sees the other way. Our minister sees themselves as feudal lords. They are the landlords. They are people. They are the chiefs, and they behave as if they are the slave owners, and we are the slaves after that serve them. And this should stop. The attitude should be of service to the people. So when lecturers make genuine demands, you address it. I don't blame them. Most of their children are not in our public schools.
Right.
They are scattered in Europe and America and everywhere. That is why they are not taking this thing seriously. Right. And until a law is made that makes that public servants, appointees, and political leaders, a law should be made that their children should be in public schools and they should use public hospitals. This malaise will continue. Let's make that law so that our public education and health systems and other public facilities can be put to maximum use. Right.
Thank you very kindly, Ambrose Igboke. So I'll bring you back to the studio for your own final thoughts. I've seen a lot of people now looking at where we started, the Ukrainian-Russian war, and here in Nigeria, I see a lot of people who often call for revolution in Nigeria, calling for a breakaway, and some parts of this country. Is there any other lesson to learn from this? Because we see people now being displaced. Imagine Ukraine of all countries.
Massively, in their thousands. The earlier we can begin to get things right here, the better for all of us. I have called for the reinvention of Nigeria, which will require a total surgical operation on virtually every part of our lives and living. We cannot continue this way. Perhaps we do a lock-in the way Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore. Today, Singapore is a different story. Not too far from us is Dubai. I was in Dubai when they started that development. Go there today, you will be wondering if you are in another country or another land. But we have been stagnated on so many fronts. So I am begging now, if only they will listen, those holding levers of power, those managing our commonwealth, to know that unless we grow this country, no foreigner, no foreign country will come and grow it. Otherwise, if tomorrow anyone wakes up to say we want to take over Nigeria, before we know what is happening, they will. See how many years that it has taken us to combat terrorism that has now had branches. It now has kidnappers, hoodlums, bandits, and all of that. It's a reflection of our seriousness as putting a total end to it. Other countries have had the same problems. Well, they brought in a lot of determination, and then they brought it, to a more reasonable end. I was pained on Sunday when I heard that the entire Beulah government area has been taken over by terrorists in Borno State. It's unfortunate.
Well,
so we need to be more precise, deliberate now in every policy action we are putting up, and let the spirit of me, myself, and I, nepotism, corruption, let's put them to rest and work and grow in our country.
All right, so that's all we have. That's all we can talk about. There's so many things, so many issues, happening here and there. You talk about issues today. There's some that will also be reported in the newspapers tomorrow. Thank you very kindly, Public Affairs Analyst Oladeinde Ariyo. Thank you so much. And also via Zoom, we'll say thank you to you from Enugu, Public Affairs Analyst Ambrose Igboke. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.